TJ Technologies is proud to sponsor today's Farm Basics. Micronutrients are essential for healthy and productive growth in lawns, gardens, and crops. Check us out at tjmicromix.com because it's the little things that make a big difference.
During our Farm Basics time today, we wanted to talk a little about how and why crops mature.
Well, every crop is different, whether you're looking at a grass crop like corn or wheat, or a broadleaf crop like soybeans or sunflowers. They're all triggered by different things in our environment to complete that one job that's really the purpose of every plant's life, that's reproducing.
Okay, let's talk specifically about corn to begin with. With corn, it matures based on heat units. So in other words, the more heat that it gets, the quicker it is going to get to maturity. If it has lots of heat throughout the year, then it's going to reach maturity that much sooner. If it does not have a lot of heat, it just takes that much longer for it to mature. And the way that we'll figure how quickly it is coming along and how much heat we've actually gotten is by measuring growing degree days. So let's talk about the formula of growing degree days.
The traditional formula for figuring out growing degree days is take the high temperature of the day plus the low temperature of the day and divide it by 2 and then subtract 50, which is a base number. So for example, you had a high temperature of 70 degrees, a low temperature of 50 degrees. Add that together is 120, divide by 2 is 60, and then subtract 50, you would have accumulated 10 growing degree days for that particular day. Now there are a couple of caveats. When we're considering growing degree days for corn, we typically will not take a high temperature above 86. So for example, say that our high for the day was 90, we would just call that 86 because we can't go above 86. After that point, typically it doesn't gain us anything with corn. And for a low temperature, we always stop at 50. So if our morning temperature was 45, we would just call that 50.
Okay, so that's a little about corn and the growing degree days that we've got there. With soybeans, that's a completely different plant. And with soybeans, you're going to see maturity happen based on the shortening of the days with indeterminate soybeans. In other words, once we've reached the longest day of the year, which is June 21st, then the days begin to get shorter. The plant senses that, so it will start to flower, it will start to put pods on after that point. But I don't really care if you planted your soybeans April 20th or May 20th. It doesn't make any difference. Indeterminate soybeans are going to start reproducing at about the same time, or the reproductive stages at about the same time, because they are triggered by the shortening of the days. Now that's different than determinate soybeans that you'll see in the southern U.S. Let's explain that a little bit.
With determinate soybeans, they will get all of their vegetative stages done first before the reproductive stages start. They will grow to the full extent that plant is going to grow first, then they will start putting on seed. So it is a little bit different in the northern states. Those soybean plants will start putting on flowers right away if they're planted late, and they don't really care how tall they are. Where in the southern United States, those plants will grow as big as they're going to grow, then they will start flowering.
So in other words, with those determinate soybeans, their heat units actually do come into play. They really don't when we're talking about indeterminate soybeans in the northern part of the United States.
So when you're growing any kind of crop in your garden or out in a field, you need to know how that plant matures and why it matures to be able to know exactly when you want to plant it and have the best crop possible.
Well, another thing you need to have the best crop possible is great weed control, especially when you've got our Weed of the Week. Can you identify this week's weed?